He opened his mouth to speak bitterly when Sattel appeared. He lined up beside the general and Vale. "They fooled me too, Lockley," he said wryly. "But it's all right. They had to. They thought you were fooled. Those 3 men in the box with you the other day, they said you were fooled too. And they're sharp Secret Service men." "You're very convincing, aren't you?" he raged. "But—" "You believe," said Sattel, "I've joined up with spies and traitors. You believe—" He outlined with precision exactly what Lockley did believe: that phantom monsters were to be credited with waging war against America while another nation actually murdered Americans. It was a remarkably accurate picture of Lockley's state of mind. "But that's all wrong," insisted Sattel. "This is a quick trick by our own people for our own safety. For the benefit of all the world. It's a trick to forestall just what I described." The faraway headlights drew nearer, but no car could have come from the construction camp as quickly as this. "The fact is," said the general, "that our spies tell us that another very great nation has developed this beam we've been demonstrating to all the world. So did we. And we couldn't use it, but they would. If they didn't use it against us, they'd use it for any sort of emergency dirty trick. So we made up this invasion to persuade every country on Earth to arm itself against this particular weapon. Nothing less than monsters in space would justify arming, in the eyes of some politicians. Of course, they'll arm against us as well as anybody else." He spoke matter-of-factly. A glance at Lockley's face would have told him that persuasiveness would not work. "This trick, with the defense we intended to reveal," the general added, "should mean that a very nasty weapon won't ever be used, either to start or end a war. Maybe the war won't occur because we've said there are monsters who fly around in spaceships." Lockley had a confused impression that he was dreaming this. It was not the way things should happen. This was not true. When he squeezed or released the improvised switch in his hand, the rocket behind him would disappear in a monstrous flame, and he and the 3 men who faced him would vanish, and there would be an explosion crater and a shattered mass of wrecked cars. "It was an interesting job," said Vale. "The Army dumped 100 tons of high explosive into the lake. The 2 radars that reported a ship in space were arranged to be operated by 2 special men, who got their orders directly from the President. We picked a day with full cloud cover. The radar operators inserted their fake tapes and made their reports, and the Army set off the 100-ton explosion in the lake. From there on, it was just a matter of using the terror beam." "I mention," said the general mildly, "that not one human being has been killed by anything we've done. Would you expect traitors to be so careful, or spies?" Lockley said thickly, "You stand there arguing. You're trying to make me believe you. But there's Jill. What's happened to her? How did you make her record that tape? Where's Jill? She won't tell me it's all right." Headlights swept up to the floodlit space. The car stopped. Jill came into view. She saw Lockley standing against the rocket's base. She ran. She stood beside the general and Vale and Sattel. She looked worn and desperately anxious. "What have they done to you?" demanded Lockley fiercely. She shook her head. "Nothing. I couldn't stay at the camp when I was so sure you'd come to try to help me. So I came here. I don't know what they've told you yet, but it's all right. We were fooled, as the world has to be. Believe it. Please believe it." "What have they done to you?" he repeated terribly. "What have they done to the world?" demanded Jill. "They've made every nation look to us as the defender of their freedom. And we are. They've made everybody ready to fight against more monsters if they come, and to fight against men if they try to enslave them with the terror beam or anything else. Would traitors have done that?" Lockley knew that he had to decide. It was an unbearable responsibility. He was not convinced, even by Jill. But he was no longer certain that he had been right. "Why didn't you kill me?" he demanded. "I could have been shot down from a distance. You didn't have to come close to talk to me. If the rocket blew, what would it matter?" "You've got a protection against the terror beam," said the general matter-of-factly. "So have we. But ours weighs 2 tons. Yours can be carried without being a burden. And—" his eyes went to the unlikely cheese grater over Lockley's shoulder. "And yours detonates explosives. If we can equip the world with those, Lockley, we'll have peace." Lockley thought of a decisive test. He grimaced. "You want me to risk being a traitor. All right. What's in it for me? What am I offered?" The general shrugged, his eyes hardening. Vale spread out his hands. Sattel snorted. Jill moistened her lips. Lockley turned upon her. "You want me to believe," he said harshly. "What do you offer if I turn over the thing to these men you say are honest men and neither spies nor traitors? What do you offer?" She stared at him. Then she said, quietly, "Nothing." Lockley hesitated once more, for a long instant. But that was the right answer. Nobody who'd been bought or bribed or frightened into being a traitor would have thought of it. "That," said Lockley, "by a strange coincidence, happens to be my price." He ripped away a wire. He flung the queer combination of pocket radio and cheese and nutmeg graters to the general. "I'll explain later how it works," he said wearily, "if I haven't made a mistake." After a suitable time the general came to him. Lockley was convinced now. The reaction of the men who'd been guards and truck drivers and the like was conclusive. They regarded him with a certain cordial respect which was not the reaction of either traitors or invaders. "We've been checking that little device, Lockley," said the general happily. "It's perfect for our purposes. So much better than a 2-ton generator to interfere with and cancel the terror beams. Marvelous! And do you know what it means? With all the world believing we've been attacked from space, and with our great show of taking back Boulder Lake—" "How will you manage that?" asked Lockley, without too much interest. "The rocket," said the general, beaming. "When troops start into the park, the rocket takes off. It heads for empty space. And we explain that the aliens went away when they found their weapon useless, and we started to get rough with them." "Oh," said Lockley, listlessly. "But the really beautiful thing," the general told him, "is your gadget. They can be made by millions, ridiculously cheap, they tell me. Everybody in the world will want one, and we'll pass them out. No government could stop that, not even Russia. But, do you see, Lockley?" Lockley shook his head. He always had a tendency to look on the dark side of future events. The future did not look bright to him. "Don't you see?" demanded the general, chuckling. "They detonate explosives, those little gadgets. There's no harm in that. Where explosives are used in industry, you've only to make sure that nobody turns one on too close. In 9/10 of the world, however, civilians aren't allowed to have guns. But think of the consequences there." Lockley was weary. He was dejected. The general grinned from ear to ear. "Why, when these are distributed, even the secret police can't go armed. What price dictators then? For that matter, what price soldiers? The Cold War ends, Lockley, because there couldn't be a conquering army in the modern sense. The tanks wouldn't run. The cars would stall. And the guns. an invasion would have to be made with horse